The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void like a massive crystal, reflecting the light of 1,000 distant stars. Inside, representatives from 300 species gathered in the circular assembly hall. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, converting countless languages into something each species could understand. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human podium, her hands gripping the edges of the metal stand. She had been Earth's voice for 23 years now. Her hair had gone from black to silver during that time. The stress of representing humanity to a galaxy that barely respected them had aged her faster than the years alone could account for. Today would be different. Today she would make them listen. "Honored council members," Elena began, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. "I come before you with evidence of systematic genocide. The Krath Dominion has attacked 17 worlds in the past 2 years. They claim these attacks are accidents or misunderstandings. They are not." She activated the holographic display. Images filled the air above the assembly floor. Burning cities. Dead families. Children who would never grow up. The representatives shifted in their seats. Some looked away. Others whispered to their aides. 1 week ago, the Krath attacked New Terra. It is a farming colony. No weapons. No military bases. Just families growing food to feed the outer colonies. Elena's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed forward. They killed 137 people. The Krath commander said their navigation system malfunctioned. This is a lie. She pulled up more data. Flight paths, communication records, tactical analysis. Everything pointed to a deliberate attack. The Krath are testing the Council's resolve. They want to see how much they can take before anyone stops them. I am asking you, pleading with you to take action. Invoke the emergency protocols. Send peacekeepers. Do something before more innocent people die. The chamber fell silent. Elena looked around at the alien faces staring back at her. Some showed pity. Others showed annoyance. Most showed nothing at all. The Krath representative, a massive reptilian creature named Scarth, rose from his seat. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights. When he smiled, rows of sharp teeth showed. "The human ambassador grows emotional," Scarth said, his voice deep and rumbling. "Understandable for such a young species. But emotions cloud judgment. Our investigation clearly shows a system malfunction. We have paid reparations to the families. The matter is closed." "Reparations?" Elena's voice rose. "You paid money and think that makes it acceptable? Those were people. Living, breathing people with families and dreams and—" Ambassador Vasquez, the council chairman, interrupted. He was a tall, thin being from the Lumini species, all grace and cold logic. "Please control yourself. Emotional outbursts are not productive." Elena took a deep breath. She had played this game for 2 decades. She knew the rules. Stay calm, present facts. Be diplomatic. But the facts did not matter anymore. The council had already decided. "Then let me present this calmly," Elena said, forcing her voice to remain level. "The Krath Dominion is expanding through force. They are violating council law. If you do not act, they will continue. And when they come for your worlds, when your people are the ones dying, who will speak for you?" The chairman nodded slowly. "Your concern is noted. We will now vote on whether to investigate further or to accept the Krath explanation and compensation." Elena watched as the votes came in. The display showed the results in real time. She was not surprised as the numbers climbed higher on the side of accepting the Krath version of events. The Krath had allies. They had made deals and promises. They had political power that humanity lacked. The final vote was not even close. 247 to accept, 53 to investigate. Humanity's voice meant nothing here. Elena stood in silence for a moment. She thought about all the warnings she had given over the years. All the times she had stood at this podium and told them that humanity was not weak. That they were choosing to follow the rules. That they were holding back their true capabilities because they wanted peace. No one had believed her. They saw humans as clever with machines and good at negotiating trade deals. But militarily, physically, the galaxy saw them as soft, as weak, as a species that talked big but could not back it up. "Very well," Elena said quietly. "The council has spoken. I want every member here to remember this moment. Remember that humanity came to you with open hands. We followed your rules. We asked for your help. We warned you what we were capable of if pushed too far." She looked directly at Scarth. The Krath representative met her gaze with amusement in his eyes. "You have made your choice," Elena continued. Now you will see what humans are like when we stop asking for permission. She closed her datapad and walked out of the chamber. The representatives behind her burst into conversation. Some laughed at the dramatic exit. Others discussed whether humanity would actually do anything. Most simply moved on to the next agenda item. Elena did not care. She had done her job. She had tried every diplomatic option. She had given them every chance to do the right thing. Now it was time for someone else to do their job. She walked through the curved corridors of the council station until she reached the human embassy section. Her aide, a young man named David Chen, waited for her outside her office. It did not go well, he said. It was not a question. No, Elena replied. Initiate Protocol Omega. Recall all ambassadors. Contact Earth Defense Command. Tell General Chen the restrictions are lifted. David's face went pale. Are you certain? Once we start this, I am certain, Elena said firmly. Get it done. David nodded and hurried away. Elena entered her office and sat at her desk. She pulled up a communication terminal and entered a code she had hoped never to use. A code that would reach every human colony, every ship, every military installation. The message was simple. Protocols revoked. Full authorization granted. Defend ourselves. Defend our allies. Show them what we are. She sent it and leaned back in her chair. There would be no going back now. Across human space, the message arrived. On Earth, in an underground facility beneath the mountains of Colorado, General Marcus Chen stood in a command center that had been built 50 years ago when humanity first joined the Galactic Council. The walls were covered with displays showing ship positions, resource stockpiles, and tactical data. Chen was 63 years old. He had fought in the last war before Earth unified. He remembered what humans were capable of when they stopped holding back. He had hoped he would never have to see it again. His communication officer called out, General, we have a priority Omega message from Ambassador Vasquez. Chen closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and nodded. Display it. The message appeared on the main screen. Chen read it twice. Then he turned to his staff. Open the sealed orders. Contact all fleet commanders. Activate the reserve ships. It is time. Around the room, officers moved quickly. They had trained for this scenario for decades. They had hoped it would never come. But they were ready. Deep in the oceans of Earth, massive submarine carriers received the signal. Their hulls opened and warships began to rise, ships that were supposed to not exist according to Council regulations. On the moon, hidden inside fake mining facilities, more ships powered up. Dreadnoughts 3 times the size of anything humanity had officially registered with the Council. On Mars, on the asteroid bases, on colonies throughout human space, the same scene played out. Weapons that were supposedly banned were loaded. Soldiers who were officially just colonists put on armor and picked up rifles. Pilots climbed into strike craft that could fly circles around anything the Council had ever seen. In orbit around Earth, a communication station broadcast a final message to the Galactic Council. It was simple and direct, you were warned. The Krath Dominion received word of unusual human activity within hours. Commander Scarth, fresh from his victory at the Council, laughed when he heard the reports. Let them posture, he told his subordinates. Humans are merchants and engineers, not warriors. If they want to throw a tantrum, we will teach them their place. He ordered 3 of his fleets to the human border. 47 warships total, more than enough to handle whatever the humans might send. The Krath fleet commander, a veteran named Thrak, was more cautious. He had studied humans during his career. Something about them made him nervous. The way they looked at problems, the way they learned, the way they adapted. But orders were orders. Thrak positioned his fleet near the human border and waited. He did not have to wait long. The sensor officer called out, Contact, multiple human ships entering the sector. Numbers, Thrak asked. 5 ships, 1 large vessel and 4 smaller carriers. Thrak relaxed slightly. 5 ships against 47? This would be over quickly. Open a channel, he ordered. Let me speak to their commander. The view screen activated. A human appeared. He was older, with gray hair and hard eyes. He wore a military uniform that looked functional rather than decorative. I am General Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. You are ordered to withdraw from this sector immediately. Thrak bared his teeth in what his species considered a smile. I am Commander Thrak of the Krath Dominion. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender your ships and we may allow you to live." Chen's expression did not change. "You had your chance for surrender, Commander. That opportunity has expired." The channel closed. Thrak stared at the blank screen for a moment. Then he laughed. "Human arrogance is impressive. All ships attack formation. Disable their vessels but try to take them intact. The Council will want to see what rules they have been breaking." His fleet moved forward, surrounding the 5 human ships. Standard Krath tactics called for overwhelming force at medium range. Energy weapons would disable shields and engines. Then boarding parties would secure the ships. The human vessels did not try to run. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the Krath formation. "They are either very brave or very stupid," Thrak muttered. His weapons officer opened fire along with the rest of the fleet. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the human ship's dead center, and the human ships kept coming. "Report," Thrak demanded. "Their shields are holding." "No, wait. They do not appear to be using shields. Their armor is absorbing our fire." "That is impossible. Increase power." The Krath fleet poured more energy into their attack. The human ships glowed red-hot from the bombardment. Their hulls should have been vaporized. Instead, outer layers of armor burned away, revealing more armor underneath. The heat dissipated across the hull in patterns that suggested careful engineering. Then the human ships opened fire. The sound of railguns firing cannot travel through space, but the effect was unmistakable. Tungsten slugs the size of cars launched at 3% of light speed. They crossed the distance between fleets in seconds. The first Krath ship simply exploded. The slug went through the shields like they were not there, punched through the hull, and came out the other side. The ship broke apart from the kinetic energy transfer. Then the missiles launched, thousands of them, each smaller than a person but moving fast and maneuvering independently. The Krath Point defense systems tried to shoot them down. They destroyed hundreds, but thousands more got through. Krath ships began dying. Not disabled, dying. Reactors breached, hulls torn open, crew exposed to vacuum. "Evasive maneuvers!" Thrak shouted. "Reform the line! Focus fire!" But the human carriers had launched strike craft, small 1- or 2-person vessels that moved with impossible agility. They dove through the Krath formation, firing precisely at weapon systems and engines. Thrak watched in horror as his fleet fell apart. These were not the limited vessels humanity was supposed to have. This was not the defensive posture they were supposed to maintain. This was something else entirely. This was war, real war, human war. And the Krath had no idea how to fight it. The battle lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, 43 Krath warships were destroyed. 4 more were crippled and captured. The human fleet had taken damage to 2 ships, but both were still operational. Not a single human casualty. Commander Thrak found himself on the bridge of his flagship, now powerless and drifting. Human boarding pods had attached to his hull. He could hear the sound of cutting torches working through his blast doors. His crew looked to him for orders, but what orders could he give? The doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the bridge. Through the haze, armored figures emerged. They were shorter than Krath warriors, but their armor made them look massive. Each one carried weapons that looked brutal and functional. No decorative elements. No ceremonial designs. Just tools built for killing. A human stepped forward and removed their helmet. It was a woman with short dark hair and a scar across her cheek. She looked at Thrak with cold, professional eyes. "Commander Thrak," she said in perfect Krath language, "you are now a prisoner of war. Order your crew to stand down." Thrak's pride warred with his survival instinct. Pride lost. He gave the order. The humans moved through his ship with disturbing efficiency. They knew exactly where everything was. Bridge, engineering, weapon systems, crew quarters. They had studied Krath ship designs down to the smallest detail. On the HMS Wellington, General Chen watched the tactical display update. All enemy ships neutralized, all objectives achieved. He allowed himself a small smile. It had been a long time since he commanded in actual combat. The old skills had not faded. "Open a broad channel," he ordered. "All frequencies. Make sure every ship station and sensor array in this sector can hear it." His communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Chen looked directly into the camera. He knew this message would reach the Galactic Council within hours. He wanted them to hear it clearly. This is General Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Today the Krath Dominion attacked our vessels and were defeated. This was not a war. This was a border skirmish. A demonstration of capability. The Krath attacked our civilians at New Terra without provocation. We will respond proportionally. That means we are coming for your worlds, Krath, not your civilians, your military, your leadership, the ones who gave the orders. You have 1 week to evacuate your homeworld's non-combatants. After that, we are coming. This message ends. The channel closed. Chen turned to his executive officer, a younger man named Rodriguez who had been practically bouncing with nervous energy throughout the entire battle. Get me a casualty report from the captured ships, Chen ordered. I want to know how many Krath died and how many survived. And treat the prisoners according to the Geneva Conventions. They are soldiers who followed orders, not war criminals. Sir, the Krath do not have anything like the Geneva Conventions, Rodriguez pointed out. We do, Chen replied. That matters. Across the galaxy, the battle data reached the Galactic Council station within 6 hours. The initial reports were dismissed as impossible. Energy signatures that large could not come from human ships. Kinetic weapons moving at those speeds should not be possible for a species of humanity's supposed development level. Then the visual recordings arrived. Council intelligence analysts watched the battle footage in stunned silence. They ran it through verification protocols. They checked for tampering or simulation artifacts. The data was real. Chairman Kelrus of the Lumini watched the footage in his private office. He replayed the moment when the first Krath ship exploded over and over. The tungsten slug had been visible for just a fraction of a second before impact. The Krath shields had done nothing. He pulled up humanity's registered military assets. 300 defensive corvettes, 20 patrol cruisers, no dreadnoughts, no carriers, no weapons above Class 4 energy output. He compared that to what the footage showed. Ships 3 times the size of what was registered. Weapons that made Class 4 look like children's toys. Tactics that suggested centuries of military doctrine refined through actual warfare. Ambassador Vasquez had been telling the truth. Humanity had been holding back. Significantly, Kelrus made a decision. He contacted the Valorian Empire, the Council's military arm. If humanity was going to become a threat, they needed to be contained quickly before they could deploy more of these hidden assets. The Valorian Emperor Thalcaris received the message in his throne room. He was old for his species, over 400 years. He had commanded fleets in the last 3 major galactic wars. He understood military matters better than most. He watched the battle footage with growing concern. Not fear. Valorians did not fear, but concern. Analysis, he ordered his military advisor, Admiral Kael'thas. Kael'thas was younger, barely 200 years old, but brilliant in tactical matters. He studied the footage carefully before responding. The humans fight unlike any species I have studied, Kael'thas said slowly. They close to ranges we would consider suicidal. Their armor philosophy is reactive and layered rather than shield-based. Their weapons are kinetic rather than energy-based. And their tactics? Go on, Thalcaris prompted. They fight as if they have done this before, many times, against many different opponents. They anticipated every Krath maneuver. They exploited every weakness in Krath doctrine. This was not lucky. This was practiced. Can we defeat them? The Emperor asked bluntly. Kael'thas hesitated. Unknown, my Emperor. We would need more data, but I would advise caution. A species does not develop these capabilities overnight. They have been preparing for war for a long time. The question is how long, and what else have they hidden? On Earth, the news of the battle spread quickly. Reactions were mixed. In some cities, crowds gathered to celebrate. Humanity had finally shown the galaxy what they were capable of. They had defended themselves. They had won. In other cities, protests erupted. Peace activists argued that humanity had abandoned the moral high ground, that they had become the very thing they claimed to oppose, that violence, even in self-defense, was not the answer. General Chen appeared on global broadcast to address the concerns. He stood in his uniform, medals from Earth's last major war displayed on his chest. Behind him was a wall showing the names of everyone killed at New Terra. I understand the concerns about what we have done, Chen began. Many of you are asking if we have become monsters, if we have abandoned our principles. I want to address that directly. He gestured to the names behind him. These people did not choose to be part of a conflict. They were farmers, teachers, children. They were killed because someone decided their lives did not matter. We asked the Galactic Council for justice. We were denied, so we took action. Some say violence is never the answer, Chen continued. I wish that were true. I have spent my entire life studying violence. I have seen what it does to people, to societies, to civilizations. I do not glorify it. I do not enjoy it. But I also will not stand by while innocent people die and their killers face no consequences. He paused, letting his words sink in. We are not attacking civilian targets. We are not committing genocide. We are holding accountable those who make the decisions to harm others. That is not the same as what the Krath did to New Terra. Never forget that distinction. The broadcast ended. Public opinion remained divided, but the military mobilization continued regardless. On Mars, in a facility built into the side of Olympus Mons, scientists worked frantically to prepare more ships for deployment. The production lines had been quiet for decades, building civilian vessels and maintaining the secret military stockpile. Now they roared back to life. Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of the Weapons Development Program, oversaw the activation of systems that had only existed in simulation. The railgun platforms were functioning perfectly. The missile swarms were outperforming projections. The strike craft were everything she had hoped they would be. But she felt sick watching the casualty reports from the battle. She had designed some of those weapons. Her equations had calculated the optimal impact angles for maximum damage. Her simulations had predicted how Krath armor would fail under kinetic stress. She had built tools for killing, and now people were dying because of her work. Her assistant, a young engineer named Marcus, noticed her expression. Dr. Kim, are you all right? Sarah shook her head. I created weapons of war, Marcus. I thought it was theoretical. Something we would never use, but we are using them. People are dying. Marcus considered his words carefully. My grandfather was at New Terra. He was one of the ones who did not make it. Would you prefer we had nothing to defend ourselves with? Sarah did not have an answer for that. In the Krath capital city of Krathnos, Emperor Vakresh received the news of the fleet's destruction with cold fury. He was enormous even by Krath standards, nearly 3 meters tall with scales that had darkened to almost black with age. Impossible, he hissed. Humans are weak. They are merchants and engineers, not warriors. His military advisor, General Scar, was one of the few survivors of the battle. He had been on one of the captured ships and was released with Chen's message. He looked different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. They are warriors, my emperor, Scar said quietly. Perhaps the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. We attacked them as if they were prey. We were wrong. Coward, Vakresh roared. You lost one battle and now you cringe before them? I lost 43 ships in 4 hours, Scar corrected. Against 5 of theirs. They knew our tactics better than we did. They exploited every weakness. And they did it casually, my emperor, as if it were routine. Then we will send more ships, Vakresh decided. We will crush them with numbers. Scar looked at his emperor with something close to pity. They gave us a week to evacuate Krathnos. They are coming for us, not to invade, to punish. I believe them. Let them come, Vakresh said. Our orbital defenses have never been breached. 300 defense platforms, 15 battle stations, 400 ships. They would need 10 times the force they have to threaten us. My emperor, Scar said carefully. What if they have 10 times the force? What if everything we have seen is just the beginning? Vakresh did not answer, but somewhere in his ancient mind doubt began to grow. On the council station, Ambassador Vasquez prepared to leave. She had submitted her formal resignation from the council. Humanity would no longer participate in an organization that protected war criminals. Before she left, she gave one final press conference. Reporters from 300 species crowded into the briefing room. They shouted questions. They demanded answers. They wanted to know if humanity was declaring war on the entire galaxy. Elena raised her hand and silence fell. She still had that presence even now. Humanity is not at war with the galaxy, she said clearly. We are at war with those who harm innocents and face no consequences. The Krath attacked our civilians. The council did nothing. So we acted. That is not aggression. That is justice. What about the Valorian Empire? A reporter called out. They are mobilizing against you. Then they will learn the same lesson the Krath learned, Elena replied. We do not want to fight them. We would prefer peace, but if they come for us, we will defend ourselves, and we will win. How can you be so certain? Another reporter asked. Elena smiled grimly. Because we have been practicing for 10,000 years. We fought each other for millennia before we unified. We know every dirty trick, every tactical doctrine, every strategic principle. We stopped fighting because we chose to, not because we forgot how. The galaxy is about to learn that difference. She left the podium to chaos. Reporters shouted more questions, but she ignored them. Her work here was done. Admiral Keltus watched the press conference from his flagship. He was assembling a fleet to confront humanity. 200 ships, the largest force the Valorian Empire had deployed in a century. He should have felt confident. The Valorians were warriors. They had honor and discipline. They had fought and won countless battles. But watching the human ambassador speak, seeing the certainty in her eyes, Kael'thas felt something unfamiliar. He felt doubt. In the depths of space, hidden beyond sensor range of any council world, the human reserve fleet waited. 300 ships, dreadnoughts and carriers that had been built in secret over 5 decades, crews that had trained in hidden facilities, weapons that the council had never imagined. They waited for orders that would soon come. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had been warning them about for 50 years. They were about to see what happened when humans stopped holding back. The human fleet arrived at Krathnos 7 days after the border battle. General Chen had given them a week to evacuate civilians. Many Krath had fled. Many more had stayed, either from pride or disbelief that humans would actually attack their homeworld. Emperor Vakresh stood in his command center, deep beneath the planetary surface. Around him, displays showed the orbital defense network, 300 automated platforms, each capable of destroying a ship with a single salvo, 15 massive battle stations, each larger than most species' capital ships, and 400 warships, the remaining pride of the Krath fleet. How many human ships? Vakresh demanded. 73, his sensor officer reported. Mix of dreadnoughts, carriers, and support vessels. Vakresh laughed. It was not a happy sound. 73 against over 700 defensive assets? They are insane. General Scar, standing nearby, was not so confident. He had seen what just 5 human ships could do. 73 was a massive escalation, and if humanity had revealed 5 ships a week ago, how many more did they have? The human fleet stopped at maximum weapons range. They did not advance. They did not attack. They simply broadcast a message. General Chen appeared on every screen in Krath space. Military channels, civilian broadcasts, emergency networks. Everyone saw his face. People of Krathnos, Chen began. Your emperor ordered an attack on our civilian colony. He killed innocents without cause. We asked for justice. We were denied. So we have come to deliver it ourselves. We do not wish to harm civilians. We have given you time to evacuate. Those who remain by choice are responsible for their own safety. But know this, we are not here to invade. We are not here to conquer. We are here to hold accountable those who ordered the death of our people. Your orbital defenses will fall, your military will be broken, and your leaders will face justice. The message ended. For a moment, silence filled the Krath command center. Then Vakresh roared. All stations open fire.
Destroy them!
The orbital defense network activated. Energy weapons that could vaporize asteroids focused on the human fleet. The battle stations added their firepower. Enough destructive power to glass a continent. The human ships did not move. They did not dodge. They simply endured. Their armor glowed white-hot. Outer layers burned away. But underneath, more armor waited. Reactive plates absorbed energy. Ablative layers dissipated heat. The humans had designed their ships to survive exactly this kind of bombardment. And while the Krath weapons fired, the humans launched their counterattack. Thousands of drones deployed from the carriers. Each was small, barely larger than a person. Each carried a fusion warhead on a one-way trip. They were not smart weapons by human standards. They did not need to be. There were simply too many of them. The Krath point defense systems tried to shoot them down. They succeeded, destroying hundreds, but thousands more got through. The drones did not target the stations directly. They targeted shield generators, power relays, sensor arrays, all the critical infrastructure that made the defense network function. Explosions blossomed across the orbital defenses, small ones at first, then larger as power systems overloaded and reactors went critical. The human dreadnoughts opened fire. Railguns sent tungsten slugs downrange at impossible speeds. Each slug hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon, Defense platforms simply ceased to exist when the slugs connected. The battle stations were tougher. Their shields held against the initial barrage. But the humans had learned from the border battle. They did not waste ammunition on shields. Instead, they targeted specific points. Weak points in the shield geometry. Places where overlapping fields created gaps. It was surgical, precise, brutal. General Scar watched the tactical display with growing horror. The defense network was falling apart. Not slowly. Not in a drawn-out battle, rapidly, systematically. The humans knew exactly what to target and exactly how to destroy it. How? Scar whispered. How do they know our system so well? The answer came from his intelligence officer. General, we are detecting massive cyber warfare attacks. The humans are inside our networks. They have been for... The officer's face went pale. For years, sir. They have maps of every system, every defensive position, every weak point. Scar felt his blood run cold. The humans had not just been building weapons in secret. They had been studying every potential enemy, learning their weaknesses, preparing for the day when diplomacy failed. 6 hours after the battle began, the orbital defense network was shattered. Broken platforms drifted in decaying orbits. Battle stations burned, their crews evacuating in escape pods that the humans allowed to flee unmolested. The warships fared no better. Those that engaged were destroyed. Those that retreated were allowed to leave. The humans were making a statement. Fight and die. Run and live. Simple choices. But the real message was in what happened next. Human dropships descended through the atmosphere. They did not land randomly. They landed on military command centers, weapons factories, government bunkers. Every location that mattered to the Krath military and political leadership, the ships deployed Marines. Not thousands, just hundreds, but each Marine was worth dozens of regular soldiers. Their armor enhanced their strength and speed. Their weapons were designed for close combat. Their training was measured in decades of simulated warfare. They moved through Krath defenses like a knife through paper. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Vakresh finally understood the situation. The humans were not invading. They were hunting. Specifically hunting him and his government. We need to evacuate, one of his advisors said urgently. We have a ship standing by. Vakresh nodded. Pride meant nothing if he was dead. He and his inner circle rushed to the landing pad where an Imperial shuttle waited. The shuttle launched, accelerating hard toward orbit. For a moment it seemed they would escape. Then a human strike craft appeared from nowhere. A single missile fired, not at the shuttle's reactor or crew compartment, at the engines. The explosion crippled the shuttle but left the hull intact. It drifted, powerless, unable to flee or fight. A tractor beam locked on, pulling it toward a human ship. Inside the shuttle, Vakresh realized with cold certainty that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had never intended to let him escape. They had simply wanted to take him alive. On the surface, the human Marines reached their objectives with minimal resistance. Most Krath soldiers surrendered when they realized they were fighting an enemy that knew their positions better than they did. The humans had hacked every camera, every sensor, every communication channel. There was no hiding, no ambushing, no surprising them. The captured Krath leadership was brought together in the ruins of the Imperial Palace. Emperor Vakresh, his generals, his advisors, everyone who had been involved in the decision to attack New Terra. General Chen arrived personally. He looked at the assembled Krath with no hatred in his eyes, just cold determination. You ordered an attack on civilians, Chen said simply. You killed innocents. You claimed it was an accident. It was not. You did it to test our resolve, to see if you could take what you wanted without consequence. You are savages, Vakresh spat. Barbarians who gave you every chance to face justice peacefully, Chen interrupted. Who warned you? Who asked the galaxy to intervene? You chose this path, now you walk it. The Krath leadership was transported off-world, not to Earth, not to a human prison, to the ruins of New Terra. The human transport ship landed in what had been the colony's main settlement. The buildings were still burned, the scorch marks still visible. Small memorials had been erected at the spots where people died. The Krath prisoners were marched through the settlement. Chen walked with them, pointing out specific locations. Here is where the Martinez family lived. Father, mother, 2 children, all killed when your ships bombed their home. Here is the school. 23 children inside when it was hit. Here is the medical center. The doctors and nurses were treating patients when your attack began. They died trying to save others. Vakresh tried to look away. Chen grabbed his head and forced him to look. No, you ordered this. You see what you did? Everybody. Every life ended. This is your doing. Own it. By the time the walk ended, several of the Krath officials were openly weeping. Vakresh was not. But something in his eyes had changed. He had seen war from a command center. He had never seen its results up close. The prisoners were then transported to the Galactic Criminal Court, a neutral institution that had been established centuries ago, but rarely used. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to observe the trial. Not council species, the oppressed ones, the minor civilizations that had suffered under Krath aggression. The evidence was overwhelming. Battle recordings, communication intercepts, testimony from Krath officers. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The verdict was never in doubt. Emperor Vakresh and his inner circle were found guilty of war crimes. The sentence was life imprisonment on a neutral facility, to be carried out by international peacekeepers from non-council species. It was not vengeance. It was justice, and the galaxy watched every moment. But while the trial proceeded, the Galactic Council faced a different crisis. The Valorian Empire had deployed its fleet, 200 ships under Admiral Kael'thas. They were ordered to intercept human forces and contain the threat. Kael'thas did not want this fight. He had studied the battle data from Krathnos. The humans had taken on 700 defensive assets and won in 6 hours, with minimal casualties. What could 200 ships accomplish? But orders were orders. The Valorian Empire had never backed down from a fight. Their honor demanded they engage. The two fleets met in a region called the Crimson Nebula. It was a cloud of ionized gas left over from an ancient supernova. Sensors did not work well there. Communications were difficult. It was the kind of place where ambushes and surprises could happen. Kael'thas deployed his fleet carefully. Standard Valorian formation, ships in mutually supporting positions, overlapping fields of fire, by-the-book tactics refined over thousands of years of warfare. The human fleet was smaller, just 50 ships. Kael'thas had numerical superiority. He should have felt confident. He did not. The battle began with the Valorians advancing. They expected the humans to retreat or attempt to maneuver for advantage. Instead, the human ships dispersed into the nebula and vanished from sensors. Report, Kael'thas demanded. Unable to track, Admiral. The nebula is interfering with our systems. Kael'thas frowned. The interference was worse than his intelligence had suggested, almost as if something was amplifying it. Then the attacks began. Not from a single direction. From everywhere. Human strike craft appeared out of the nebula, fired and vanished back into the gas. Missiles came from unexpected angles. Railgun slugs materialized from the clouds with no warning. The Valorians tried to respond, but their sensors could not lock on to targets. They fired blindly into the nebula, hitting nothing. And all the while, human cyber warfare teams were inside Valorian networks, broadcasting false orders, creating phantom sensor contacts, turning the Valorians' own systems against them. Kael'thas realized with growing dread that the humans had chosen this battlefield deliberately. They knew how to fight in the nebula. They had practiced here or in similar environments. Meanwhile, the Valorians were blind and confused. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. After 4 hours, Kael'thas gave the order to retreat. He had lost 27 ships. Another 15 were crippled. The human fleet had suffered damage to 3 vessels. None destroyed. As his remaining ships fled, Kael'thas received a communication. General Chen's face appeared on his screen. Admiral Kael'thas, Chen said. You are a good commander. Your tactics were sound. You did everything right by Valorian doctrine. That is why you lost. Kael'thas said nothing, waiting. Your people fight with honor, Chen continued. And mine fight to win. Honor gets you killed. Adaptation keeps you alive. I'm offering you a choice. Return to your empire and report what happened here. Tell them the truth. Humanity does not want war with Valoria. But if you keep coming, we will keep winning. How many of your people will die before your leaders accept that? You mock our honor, Kael'thas said quietly. No, Chen replied. I respect it. But respect does not mean I will let it kill my people. Go home, Admiral. There is no shame in surviving to fight another day, especially when that fight does not need to happen. The communication ended. Kael'thas looked at his tactical display. His fleet was broken. His pride was wounded, but his mind was clear. The humans were right. This war did not need to happen, and if it continued, Valoria would lose. Admiral Keltas returned to the Valorian homeworld of Valkar, with what remained of his fleet. He expected to be punished for the defeat. Instead, he was summoned to the Imperial Palace to give his report directly to Emperor Thalkaris. The throne room was ancient, its walls carved from a single piece of crystal that had taken 1,000 years to shape. Emperor Thalkaris sat on a throne that had held 400 generations of rulers. His advisors and generals stood in attendance. Keltas knelt and presented his report. He did not hide the truth. He described the battle in detail. The human tactics, the technological superiority, the cyber warfare, the complete and total defeat. When he finished, silence filled the hall. "You recommend we seek peace," the Emperor said. It was not a question. "I recommend we acknowledge reality, my Emperor," Keltas replied. "The humans are not the species we believed them to be. They have been preparing for war for decades, perhaps centuries. They have studied us. They know our tactics better than we know theirs, and they have shown remarkable restraint. They could have destroyed my entire fleet. They did not. They let us retreat. That tells me they do not want this war. Or it tells me they are weak," one of the generals said. "They lack the will to finish what they start." Keltas turned to face the general. "With respect, that is the thinking that got 27 ships and 4,000 Valorians killed. The humans are not weak. They are disciplined. They fight with purpose. Every shot has a reason. Every tactic has a goal. They destroyed what they needed to destroy and let the rest survive. That is not weakness. That is control." The Emperor considered this. "What do you propose?" "Send an envoy. Not to surrender. Not to beg. But to talk. To find out what the humans actually want. I do not believe they want to conquer us. If they did, they would not have let me live to tell you about it." The debate continued for hours. Some counseled war. Others counseled caution. In the end, Thalkaris made his decision. "We will send an envoy, but we will also prepare our defenses. If the humans prove treacherous, we will be ready." On Earth, the aftermath of the battles was being felt in different ways. The military was celebrating. They had proven their capabilities. They had defended humanity's interests and won decisively, but the celebrations were muted. The cost was becoming clear. Sergeant Sarah Kim walked through the medical center at the military base where she was stationed. She had fought in the Battle of Crimson Nebula as a Marine on one of the boarding teams. Her unit had captured a Valorian ship after close combat with its crew. She had killed 7 Valorian soldiers. She remembered each one. Their faces. The way they fell. The sounds they made. She could not sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back on that ship. The narrow corridors. The emergency lighting. The smell of burned electronics and blood. A psychologist assigned to her unit tried to help. "You were doing your duty. You were defending yourself and your comrades." "I know that," Sarah replied. "But knowing it does not make it easier. Those soldiers had families. They had lives. And I ended them. They would have killed you if they could have, I know that too." Sarah looked at her hands. They were steady now. During the fight, they had been steady then too. That was what scared her most. How easy it had been to kill. "My grandmother was in the last Earth War. Before unification, she told me once that the worst part was not the killing. It was how good you got at it. How natural it became." The psychologist did not have a good answer for that. Across the base in the command center, General Chen reviewed casualty reports. The Battle of Crimson Nebula had not been as clean as the earlier fights. 7 human ships had been destroyed, 3,214 personnel killed, another 800 wounded. Every name on the list was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Chen had ordered them into battle. He had known some would not come back. That knowledge sat heavy on his shoulders. His aide, Rodriguez, entered with more reports. "Sir, we are receiving communications from multiple species. Some are requesting protection. Others are threatening retaliation if we continue our operations." "What about the Valorians?" Chen asked. "They are requesting a diplomatic meeting. Formal envoy to discuss terms of peace." Chen leaned back in his chair. "Peace, that is what we wanted from the start. Set up the meeting. But make sure our defenses remain at full readiness. I trust the Valorians to be honorable, but I am not naive." The meeting was arranged on a neutral station in unclaimed space. The Valorian envoy was Admiral Keltas himself, a sign of respect and seriousness. Warriors respected warriors. General Chen met him in a conference room that overlooked the stars. No weapons, no guards. Just two military officers who had tried to kill each other, and now had to find another way forward. They sat across from each other. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You let me retreat," Kael'thas finally said. "Why?" "Because killing you would not have achieved my objective," Chen replied. "My objective was to make the Valorian Empire reconsider its actions. A dead admiral becomes a martyr. A living admiral can report the truth. The truth being that you can defeat us." "The truth being that we do not want to fight you," Chen corrected. "Yes, we can defeat you. We have proven that. But what would we gain? More dead on both sides? More families mourning? More hatred and anger? We did not start this war. We wanted the Galactic Council to handle the Krath situation. They refused, we acted. That does not mean we want to fight everyone." Kael'thas studied Chen's face. "You are sincere." "I'm exhausted," Chen said bluntly. "I am 63 years old, Admiral. I have seen more war than I ever wanted to. I unified my planet by fighting people I should have been working with. I swore I would never do it again. And here I am back in a war. The difference is, this time I know exactly what I am doing and why. I am protecting my people. Nothing more. Nothing less." "What do you want from Valoria?" Kael'thas asked.
"Stay out of our way."
"We are not attacking Council species that leave us alone. We are holding accountable those who harm innocents. If Valoria wants to continue serving as the Council's military, that is your choice. But do not make humanity your enemy unless you are prepared to lose. That is not how our honor works," Kael'thas said. "We cannot simply abandon our allies." "Then pick better allies," Chen replied. "The Krath committed genocide. Multiple times. The Council did nothing. Is that an alliance worth dying for?" Kael'thas had no immediate answer. He had been thinking the same thing during the long trip back to Valkar. The Valorian Empire prided itself on honor. Where was the honor in defending war criminals? "I will take your words to my emperor," Kael'thas said. "But I cannot promise what his decision will be." "I am not asking for promises," Chen said. "I am asking for thinking. Real thinking about what this war is about and whether it is worth Valorian blood." The two warriors parted with mutual respect. Neither knew if they would fight each other again. Both hoped they would not have to. Back on Earth, the political situation was evolving. The Commonwealth of Free Worlds was officially formed. It started with humanity and 3 minor species that had been oppressed by council members. Within weeks, 10 more species joined. Then 20. Then 50. Each new member brought the same story. Years of being ignored. Decades of exploitation. Centuries of being told they were too small, too weak, too unimportant to matter. Humanity offered them something different. Not protection in exchange for loyalty. Partnership in exchange for mutual defense. A voice in decisions. Actual representation. Former Ambassador Elena Vasquez became the Commonwealth's first chancellor. She stood before the inaugural assembly and laid out the principles that would guide them. "We are united by choice, not conquest. We defend each other not because we must, but because we choose to. And we will never become what we oppose. The moment we start behaving like the old council, acting like our might gives us the right to dominate, that is the moment we fail." The Commonwealth grew quickly. Too quickly for the remaining council species. They saw a rival power forming, a direct challenge to their authority. A faction within the council began planning something drastic, not a military response, something worse. In a secret facility buried deep beneath the council's oldest world, ancient technology was activated. It had been left behind by the precursor race that had founded the original galactic civilization 10,000 years ago. A weapon so terrible that its very existence had been classified above every other secret. The Genesis Protocol. It was capable of destabilizing a star, of causing it to go supernova decades or centuries ahead of schedule. It had been built as a last resort against an existential threat. Some council members now believed humanity was exactly that threat. The weapon platform that housed the Genesis Protocol was hidden in a dead system, far from any inhabited worlds. It had been dormant for millennia. Now it was being brought online. The activation codes were split between 5 council members. Each had to input their code for the system to function. It was meant to prevent any single individual from using it. But fear and desperation had brought 5 leaders to agree on the unthinkable. Their target, Sol Earth's star. If they destroyed the star, they would destroy Earth and the heart of humanity's power. The Commonwealth would collapse without its founding species. The moral implications were staggering. Earth had 15 billion people. The entire Sol system had another 5 billion spread across colonies on Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of orbital habitats. 20 billion people condemned to die. The 5 council members told themselves it was necessary, that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to continue, that the deaths of 20 billion was acceptable if it saved trillions. They input their codes. The weapon platform began its activation sequence. It would take 72 hours to fully charge and execute the star destabilization protocol. Humanity had 3 days to live. The first indication something was wrong came from a human intelligence operative embedded deep within council networks. She had been working undercover for 5 years, posing as a low-level communications technician. Her name was classified. Even General Chen only knew her as Agent 7. Agent 7 noticed unusual data traffic from one of the oldest and most secure council servers. She traced it carefully, following the digital breadcrumbs. What she found made her blood run cold. She sent an emergency transmission. Priority Alpha, the highest level alert. Within minutes, every human, military, and civilian leader was reading her report. The Genesis protocol was active. Sol was the target. 3 days until execution. General Chen stared at the data in disbelief. He had prepared for many scenarios: invasion, economic warfare, diplomatic isolation. But genocide on this scale? The complete annihilation of humanity's homeworld and 20 billion people. Is this confirmed? He asked his intelligence chief. Yes, sir. We have corroborated it with 3 other sources. The weapon is real. It is active. And it is targeting Sol. Chen closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression was cold and determined. Get me every ship we have. Every weapon. Every soldier. We have 1 shot at stopping this. If we fail, humanity ends. Emergency mobilization orders went out. Ships were pulled from patrols. Reserves were activated. The entire human fleet was ordered to assemble at a staging point near Council space. The mission was clear. Find the weapon platform.
Destroy it.
Before it could fire. The problem was that the Council had hidden it well. The dead system it occupied was not on any standard charts. Human intelligence was working frantically to locate it, but time was running out. On Earth, the population was informed of the threat. There was no hiding something this big. Panic would have been understandable. Instead, something else happened. People came together. Families hugged each other. Strangers helped strangers. If these were their last days, they would face them together. In cities around the world, impromptu gatherings formed. People sang. They shared stories. They remembered what made life worth living. Not because they had given up hope, but because they refused to let fear be the last thing they felt. General Chen assembled his strike force. 30 ships. It was all he could spare and still defend human space if this was a trap. Each ship was loaded with every weapon humanity possessed, including one final surprise that had never been deployed. Wormhole generators. The technology was experimental, unstable, dangerous. But it would allow the fleet to travel vast distances instantly. To appear anywhere without warning. It was humanity's trump card, kept secret until now. Chen stood on the bridge of the HMS Defiant, a ship built with one specific purpose: destroying heavily defended targets. It carried a weapon that had only been tested in simulation, a gravity lance capable of creating a localized singularity, a miniature black hole that would consume anything in its path. All ships ready, sir? Rodriguez reported. Chen looked at the tactical display. Somewhere out there was a weapon capable of killing his entire species. He had 3 days to find it and stop it. Engage wormhole drive, Chen ordered. All ships on my mark. We are going hunting. The wormhole opened like a tear in reality. Space twisted and folded. The human strike force vanished from their staging area and reappeared 40 light-years away in less than a second. General Chen gripped his command chair as the universe spun around him. The wormhole travel was disorienting. Nausea swept through the bridge crew. Some vomited. Others simply held on and endured. But they had arrived in Council Core territory, bypassing dozens of defensive perimeters. The element of surprise was complete. Status report, Chen ordered, fighting his own stomach. All ships accounted for, Rodriguez reported. Wormhole generators are offline. They need 12 hours to recharge before we can jump again. 12 hours. Chen added that to the calculation. They had 70 hours left before the Genesis protocol executed. Find the weapon platform. Fight through whatever defenses it had. Destroy it, all before time ran out. Begin scanning for the target, Chen ordered. Look for high-energy signatures, unusual stellar readings, anything that does not belong in a dead system. The fleet spread out, sensors working at maximum range. They were searching a volume of space that contained thousands of potential hiding spots, dead systems, asteroid fields, nebulae. The weapon platform could be anywhere. On Earth, Elena Vasquez addressed the Commonwealth Assembly. The member species knew about the threat. Many were terrified, not just for humanity but for themselves. If the Council would commit genocide against humanity, what would stop them from doing it to any other species that challenged their authority? We face an existential threat, Elena said calmly, but we face it together. Every species in this chamber has been threatened, oppressed, or ignored by the old Council. They believe that might makes right. That fear is how you control people. We will show them they are wrong. She pulled up a tactical display. Our intelligence networks have been analyzing the Genesis protocol activation. We believe we have narrowed down the weapon's location to 3 potential systems. General Chen's strike force is searching them now. But if they fail, we need to be ready. Ready for what? A representative from one of the smaller species asked. If Earth is destroyed, the Commonwealth collapses. No, Elena said firmly. That is what they want us to believe. That we are nothing without humanity. But this organization was built on a principle, not a species. We defend each other. We stand together. If Earth falls, the Commonwealth continues. Each of you must prepare for that possibility. The assembly fell silent. The weight of her words settled over them. But I do not believe Earth will fall, Elena continued. I believe in General Chen and every human serving in that fleet. They have never failed to protect us before. They will not fail now. In space, the search continued. The first dead system was empty. No weapon platform, no energy signatures, just cold rocks and radiation. The second system showed promise. Unusual readings near a collapsed star. The fleet approached cautiously, weapons ready. It was a trap. Council defense drones hidden in the asteroid field, activated and swarmed the human ships. Thousands of them, each carrying explosive charges designed to overwhelm point defense systems. Evasive action, Chen ordered. All ships defensive formation. The human fleet was prepared for this. They had anticipated that the Council would defend the weapon. Countermeasures deployed. Electronic warfare systems jammed drone guidance. Point defense lasers tracked and destroyed incoming threats, but the drones kept coming. Wave after wave, the Council had committed serious resources to protecting their secret. This is a delaying tactic, Chen realized. They know we are coming. They are trying to slow us down. He made a decision. 6 ships stay here and clear these drones. The rest of the fleet proceeds to the third system. We cannot afford to waste time. The fleet split. 6 ships remained behind to fight the drones. The other 24 jumped to wormhole transit again, burning through precious energy reserves. They emerged in the third system and immediately knew they had found it. The weapon platform hung in the void like a monument to ancient power. It was massive, easily 5 kilometers across, built from materials that predated any modern civilization. Around it, a fleet of Council ships waited. 200 vessels, more than Chen had brought, and beyond the fleet, automated defense systems. Weapons platforms that looked like they had been pulled from the same ancient technology as the Genesis protocol itself. We are outnumbered 3-1, Rodriguez said, quietly. Then we better be 3 times as good, Chen replied. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is General Chen. The weapon platform ahead of us is preparing to destroy Earth. Our home. Our families. Everything we have ever known. We have come to stop it. I will not lie to you. Many of us will not survive this battle, but we will stop that weapon. For Earth, for humanity, for the future. He paused, letting his words sink in. Activate all weapon systems. Deploy strike craft, and remember your training. We have fought impossible odds before. We have won before. We will win today. All ships attack formation. Let's show them what happens when you threaten our home. The human fleet accelerated toward the Council forces. Every sensor was active. Every weapon was armed. Every pilot and soldier was ready. The Council fleet moved to intercept. They had the numbers. They had the position. By every conventional military calculation, they should win. But they were not fighting conventional warfare. They were fighting humans. The battle began with a massive missile strike. Human ships launched every missile they had. Thousands of projectiles filled the space between the fleets. The Council point defense systems opened fire, destroying hundreds. But the missiles were a distraction. While the Council focused on the incoming barrage, human strike craft launched from their carriers. Small, fast, maneuverable. They dove through the missile swarm, using it as cover. The strike craft hit the Council formation before they realized what was happening. Precision strikes on command ships, on communications relays, on ammunition storage. The Council fleet fell into chaos. Their coordination broke down. Ships fired on targets that no longer existed, or worse, on each other, as human cyber warfare created false sensor readings. And then the human capital ships opened fire. Railguns sent tungsten death downrange. Energy weapons that had been charging since they entered the system released their stored power. The human fleet was smaller, but what they lacked in numbers they made up for in sheer destructive capability. Council ships began dying. Fast. Too fast. But the Council had numbers and time on their side. For every ship they lost, they destroyed one human vessel. The exchange rate was terrible for them, but they could afford it. Chen watched his tactical display as the battle developed. 7 human ships destroyed, 11 damaged, but they were pushing through. Getting closer to the weapon platform, the automated defense systems around the platform activated. Ancient weapons that had been sleeping for millennia. Energy beams that could slice through shields and armor like paper. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. The HMS Defiant took a direct hit. The entire port side was torn away. Atmosphere vented. Crew compartments exposed to vacuum. But the ship kept moving, kept fighting. Chen felt the Defiant shudder under the impact. Damage reports flooded in. Casualties mounting. But they were close now. So close. "Get me a firing solution on that platform," Chen ordered. "Prepare the gravity lance." "Sir, the weapon is not fully tested," the weapons officer protested. "It might not work. Or worse, it might create a permanent singularity that—" "I know the risks," Chen interrupted. "Do it anyway. We do not have another option." The Defiant pushed forward through devastating fire. More human ships fell. The HMS Wellington exploded. The carrier Ajax broke apart. The destroyer Indomitable crashed into a Council battleship in a kamikaze run. But the human fleet kept pushing, kept fighting, because behind them Earth held its breath. 20 billion people waiting to see if they would live or die. The Defiant reached firing range. The weapon platform's defenses focused on it, pouring everything into stopping the human ship. The Defiant's armor glowed white-hot. Interior bulkheads failed. Fires broke out across multiple decks. "Fire the gravity lance," Chen roared. The weapon activated. Space itself warped. A point of impossible density formed at the tip of the Defiant's main gun. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the singularity launched forward following the targeting solution. It moved slowly compared to normal weapons, but it was inexorable, unstoppable. It hit the weapon platform dead center. The Genesis protocol housing crumpled like paper. The ancient structure, which had withstood 10,000 years of cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts, simply ceased to exist. The singularity consumed it in seconds, pulling in debris and energy. Then, as designed, the singularity collapsed. It had existed for only 3 seconds. But 3 seconds was enough. The weapon platform was gone. The threat to Earth neutralized. Chen slumped in his chair. Around him, the bridge crew was cheering. They had done it. Against all odds, they had saved Earth. But the cost was devastating. 14 human ships destroyed. Over 8,000 personnel dead. Another 3,000 wounded. The remaining Council fleet began to retreat. They had lost their reason to fight. Without the weapon platform, there was no point to this battle. Chen let them go. He had no desire for more killing. "Get me a channel to Earth," Chen ordered. "I want to speak to Chancellor Vasquez." Elena's face appeared on the screen. Her eyes were red. She had been crying, but now she was smiling through the tears. "We are reading the destruction of the weapon platform," she said. "You did it, Marcus. You saved us." "At a terrible cost," Chen replied. "Too many good people died today, Elena. Too many." "I know," Elena said softly. "But they died protecting others." "That matters." "That will always matter," Chen nodded. He was too tired to argue. Too tired to feel anything but relief that it was over. But it was not quite over yet. Agent 7, the intelligence operative who had discovered the Genesis protocol, had compiled evidence of who had authorized the weapon's activation. She released it on every galactic network simultaneously. 5 council leaders. Their names. Their faces. The authorization codes they had input, everything. The galactic public exploded in outrage, not just Commonwealth species. Even loyal council members were horrified. Genocide on this scale was unthinkable. That their own leaders would contemplate it, would attempt it, shattered the last credibility the council had. Within days, all 5 leaders were arrested by their own people. The species they represented demanded accountability, demanded justice. The Galactic Council dissolved. Not from external pressure, from internal collapse. The organization simply fell apart as member species walked away in disgust. The Valorian Empire was one of the first to leave. Emperor Thalcaris personally contacted Elena Vasquez to request formal peace negotiations. "Your people have shown remarkable restraint," Thalcaris said during their first conversation. "You defeated us in battle. You could have retaliated when we learned of the Genesis Protocol. You did not. You targeted only those responsible. The Valorian Empire respects strength tempered with wisdom. We request a formal peace treaty and alliance." Elena was surprised but pleased. "What about your honor? I thought Valorians could not ally with those who defeated them." "Honor without wisdom is just pride," Thalcaris replied. "Admiral Kelthus taught me that. Your General Chen taught him. We would be honored to stand beside humanity as equals, not enemies." The treaty was signed 3 months later. The Valorian Empire became the first major power to join the Commonwealth of Free Worlds. Others followed. Species that had been neutral saw which way the wind was blowing. The Commonwealth offered something the old council never had: real representation, genuine protection, and the knowledge that might would be used to defend the weak, not oppress them. 5 years after the Battle of the Genesis platform, the Commonwealth had grown to include over 60% of galactic civilization. A new galactic council formed, this time with humanity as a founding member, with the Valorian Empire providing military expertise, with dozens of formerly oppressed species finally having a voice. The new council's first act was to ban weapons of mass destruction. The second was to establish an independent war crimes tribunal. The third was to create a joint peacekeeping force drawn from multiple species. Elena Vasquez served as the Commonwealth's chancellor for 15 years before retiring. She had aged considerably. The stress of the position had taken its toll, but she could look back with pride at what had been accomplished. General Chen retired at the same time. He was 78 years old, too old to command anymore. He spent his remaining years teaching at the military academy, ensuring the next generation understood not just how to fight, but why restraint mattered. On Earth, a memorial was erected at the site where the first council embassy had been built. It listed the names of everyone who had died in the conflicts. From New Terra, from the border battles, from Krathnos, from the Crimson Nebula, from the Genesis platform. Thousands of names, humans and aliens alike, people who had died because diplomacy failed, because power was abused, because the galaxy had to learn a hard lesson about humanity. General Chen visited the memorial on the anniversary of the Genesis platform battle every year until he died at age 92. He would stand before the names and remember. A young girl approached him on his final visit, just months before his death. She could not have been more than 10 years old. She looked at the old general with curiosity. "Sir, my teacher said you won the war. Are we safe now?" Chen knelt down with difficulty. His knees were not what they used to be. He looked at the girl with kind eyes. "Safer," he said honestly, "but safety is not permanent. It must be maintained. We have to choose peace every day, and we have to be strong enough that others respect that choice." "Will there be more wars?" the girl asked. Chen looked up at the memorial, at all those names. "Maybe, probably. Humanity is very good at war. We have had a lot of practice. But we are learning to be even better at peace. That is the real victory, not winning battles. Creating a world where battles do not need to happen. But what if someone attacks us again?" The girl persisted. Chen smiled. "Then we will defend ourselves. We will defend our friends. We will show them what we are capable of. But we will not become monsters in the process. That is the balance we must maintain. The strength to fight when necessary, the wisdom to know when it is necessary." The girl thought about this. "That sounds hard." "It is," Chen agreed. "But nothing worth doing is easy. Now go on. Your parents are probably looking for you." The girl ran off. Chen stood slowly, his joints protesting. He looked at the memorial one last time. "We did what you asked," he said quietly to the names. "We protected them. We kept Earth safe. We built something better. I hope that was enough." He turned and walked away. An old soldier leaving the battlefield one final time. 50 years after the dissolution of the old Galactic Council, the Commonwealth thrived. The galaxy had learned the lessons humanity taught. That strength without responsibility was tyranny. That peace required both the will to cooperate and the ability to defend. Human military doctrine had revolutionized how wars were fought. But more importantly, human diplomatic principles had revolutionized how wars were prevented. The story of Earth's warning became required study for every species that joined the Commonwealth. A cautionary tale about what happens when power is abused, when the weak are ignored, when diplomacy fails. But it was also a story of hope. That a species capable of terrible violence could choose restraint. That warriors could be peacemakers. That the strong could protect the weak without dominating them. In universities across 1,000 worlds, students studied the human approach to conflict. Not just the tactics and weapons, but the philosophy behind them. The idea that military force was a tool, not a solution. That winning a battle meant nothing if you lost the peace that followed. The human saying became famous throughout the galaxy. Walk softly and carry a big stick. It captured everything about humanity's approach. The preference for peace. The willingness to talk. But the unmistakable capability to fight if necessary. Admiral Kael'thas, now ancient by Valorian standards, wrote a book about his experiences fighting humanity. It became the most widely read military text in galactic history. The final chapter was titled The Lesson. "I fought humans twice," he wrote. "I lost twice, but I learned that defeat can teach more than victory. The humans showed me that honor without adaptation is suicide, that tradition without evolution is stagnation. They respected our courage while destroying our fleets. They offered peace while demonstrating their strength. This is the balance that all warrior species must learn, to be strong enough that war is unnecessary, to be wise enough to know when it becomes necessary, and to be disciplined enough to stop when the objective is achieved. The galaxy feared humanity when we learned what they were capable of. We should have, but fear alone is not respect. Humanity earned respect by showing that their power had purpose. They fought to defend, not to conquer. They punished the guilty, not the innocent. They built alliances based on choice, not coercion. This is why the Commonwealth succeeded where the old council failed. Humans warned us they were holding back. We did not listen. We paid the price for that arrogance. But humanity also showed us mercy when they could have shown us annihilation. They gave us the chance to learn, to change, to join them in building something better. That is the true measure of a civilization. Not how well they can destroy, but what they choose to build instead. The book's final words were simple. Thank you, humanity, for the lesson. We are better for having learned it. On Earth, in the year 2137, 100 years after the Genesis platform battle, a ceremony was held. Representatives from every Commonwealth species gathered at the memorial. It had been expanded over the decades, new names added. New stories told, a statue had been erected. It showed a human soldier and a Valorian warrior standing side by side, weapons lowered looking toward the stars. The inscription read, "From enemies to allies, from war to peace, from fear to hope." The current Commonwealth Chancellor, a human woman named Dr. Lisa Martinez, gave the centennial address. She was the granddaughter of one of the families killed at New Terra. Her presence was symbolic. 100 years ago, my family died in an attack that should never have happened, she began. The pain of that loss has never fully faded. But from that tragedy came something unexpected. Not just justice for those who were killed, but a transformation of how our galaxy approaches conflict. The old council operated on fear and political maneuvering. The Commonwealth operates on mutual respect and shared values. The old council protected the powerful. The Commonwealth protects everyone. That difference matters. Humanity did not want war. We tried every diplomatic option. We warned repeatedly what would happen if we were forced to defend ourselves. When our warnings were ignored, we acted. Decisively, overwhelmingly. Some called us monsters. Others called us saviors. We were neither. We were simply people who refused to let injustice go unanswered. But the real story is not about the battles we won. It is about what we did after we won them. We could have conquered. We could have dominated. We could have become the very thing we opposed. We chose not to. That choice defines us more than any military victory ever could. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives, species that had once been enemies now standing together in peace. My grandfather used to say that the true test of character is not what you do when you are weak, it is what you do when you are strong. When you have the power to take whatever you want, to do whatever you please, to force others to bend to your will, that is when character matters. That is when you show who you really are. Humanity was tested. We had the strength to destroy our enemies. We had the capability to dominate the galaxy. We chose instead to build partnerships, to offer protection without demanding submission, to share our strength rather than hoard it. That is the legacy we celebrate today. Not the battles won or the enemies defeated, but the civilization built from the ashes of war. A civilization based on choice, not conquest. On cooperation, not coercion. On justice, not power. The galaxy learned what humans are capable of when pushed too far. But more importantly, the galaxy learned what humans choose to be when given the chance. We choose peace. We choose partnership. We choose to be better. And we invite everyone, every species, every civilization to join us in that choice. Because that is the real victory, not defeating our enemies, but turning them into friends. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for all those lost in the conflicts. Humans and aliens alike, soldiers and civilians, the guilty and the innocent. Everyone touched by the violence, then music played. Not a war march, not a funeral dirge, but a celebration of life, of survival, of hope. In the crowd, an elderly Krath stood quietly. He had been a junior officer during the attack on New Terra. He had followed orders without question, without thinking about what those orders meant. After the war, after Krathnos fell, he had been tried and sentenced to community service, rebuilding what his people had destroyed. He had spent 20 years on New Terra, helping to reconstruct the colony, working alongside the families of those he had helped kill. It had been the hardest thing he ever did. Facing the consequences of his actions, seeing the pain up close, understanding finally what war really meant. But the humans had given him that chance to make amends, to be better. They could have executed him. Many called for it. Instead, they gave him the opportunity to change. Now he stood at the memorial looking at the names of his victims. He came every year. He would until he died. It was the least he could do. A human woman approached him. She was elderly, too, in her 80s. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain. "You're here again," she said softly. "I will always be here," he replied. "Your daughter, Maria Martinez, she was 10 years old. I was on the ship that bombed her school." The woman nodded. She knew. They had talked before, many times over the years. "Have you forgiven yourself yet?" she asked. "No," he said honestly. "I do not think I ever will." "Good," she replied. But there was no hate in her voice, just sadness. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is not excusing. It is choosing not to let the past poison the future. I forgave you years ago, not because what you did was acceptable, but because holding on to hate was destroying me more than it was hurting you. She placed a hand on his arm. You have spent 20 years making amends. You built homes. You taught children. You did everything you could to be better. That matters. My daughter is still gone. Nothing will bring her back. But you did not let her death be meaningless. You changed. That is what she would have wanted. The Krath felt tears running down his scaled face. He had cried often over the years. Each tear a small payment on a debt that could never be fully repaid. "Thank you," he whispered. The woman smiled sadly. "Do not thank me. Thank the humans who chose justice over vengeance, who gave you a chance when you did not deserve one, who believed that people could change. That is the real miracle. Not winning the war, but winning the peace." She walked away, leaving him with his thoughts and his memories. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Former enemies finding ways to coexist. Old wounds slowly healing. The scars remained, would always remain. But they no longer defined everything. The Commonwealth military continued to train. Humanity shared its tactical knowledge freely with allied species. The goal was not to create an empire, but to ensure that no single aggressor could threaten multiple species again. Collective security through mutual strength. But the real work happened in schools and universities, in trade negotiations and cultural exchanges, in the slow, difficult process of building trust between species that had been enemies. It was not perfect. There were setbacks. There were incidents where old prejudices surfaced, where conflicts threatened to escalate. But now there were mechanisms to handle them. Diplomatic channels, international courts, peacekeeping forces, War was still possible. Humanity had not changed that fundamental reality. But war was no longer inevitable, no longer the first option. That was progress. General Marcus Chen had been dead for 50 years, but his words were still quoted. His tactics still studied, his philosophy still taught. We are not peaceful because we are weak. We are peaceful because we are strong enough to be peaceful. Never forget that distinction. Those words were carved into the wall of every Commonwealth military academy, a reminder that strength and wisdom must go together, that the ability to destroy must be balanced by the discipline to restrain. Humanity had warned the galaxy, had tried diplomacy, had held back for decades. When pushed too far, they had shown exactly what they were capable of. But they had also shown what they chose not to do with that capability. That choice made all the difference. The galaxy had faced a reckoning, not just with humanity's military power, but with its own failures, with the corruption and complacency that had let the old council rot from within, with the acceptance of injustice as long as it happened to someone else. Humanity had forced the galaxy to look in the mirror, to see what it had become, and to decide if that was what it wanted to be. The answer eventually was no. The Commonwealth of Free Worlds was not perfect. It was not a utopia. There were still problems, still conflicts, still injustices that needed addressing, but it was better. Measurably, undeniably better, and it existed because humanity had warned the galaxy, had tried every peaceful option, and had finally said enough. The reckoning had come. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and from the ashes of war something better had been built. That was the story that would be told for 1,000 years, not a story of humanity's military triumph but of their moral victory, the victory of choosing to be better when they had every excuse to be worse. The galaxy had been warned. It had not listened. It had paid the price, but it had also been given a second chance, and together, humanity and its allies were determined not to waste it. The stars shone down on the memorial, on the names of the dead, on the living who remembered them, on the future they had all helped create. Earth had warned the galaxy. Diplomacy had failed. The reckoning had come. And from that reckoning, hope had emerged. That was the true story. That was the real victory. And that was the legacy that would endure.